We continue now at the top of Daf Zayin and Beis Mesechet Shekalim. This is Shekalim Daf 7b. The Gemara in the previous summit, Rabbi Yochanan was offended that Rabbi Eliezer did not say over a halacha in Rabbi Yochanan's name that Rabbi Yochanan had said, and now Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi are trying to calm down Rabbi Yochanan, and they say the following story. It was talking about a case of a nagar of a doorstop. The question is whether it was muksa or not. And Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yossi had an argument about this particular nagar at Shekaru sefer Torah b'chamasan, until they ended up tearing a sefer Torah in their anger over this disagreement. Gemara asks, Karus al Kadayatach, do you really think they actually tore a sefer Torah? Ela shenikra sefer Torah, it means that the sefer Torah inadvertently was torn. But the point is, there was a lot of anger over this discussion over the nagar, whether it was muksa. And there was a certain elder over there, Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma Shemo, and his name was Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma. Amar, and he said about that story to Mieni with Shakmi, Im lo have beis hakneses ze beis avodah zarah. If this beis hakneses does not turn into a beis avodah zarah, in other words, the point that Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi are trying to make is the danger of getting very angry, and that's what they're trying to tell Rabbi Yochanan. You shouldn't get so angry at Rabbi Eliezer. But then Rabbi Yochanan said you can't bring a proof from there, because when it came to that situation of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yossi, they were friends with one another, so they're held to this higher standard that there should not be anger. But in this case, Rabbi Yochanan said it's not a situation of chaverim. On the contrary, Rabbi Eliezer is a Talmud, Rabbi Yochanan said. Therefore, since Rabbi Eliezer is a Talmud, he's allowed to get angry. And the Gemara continues the story, Nichnas lefonav Rabbi Yaakov Baridi. Now Rabbi Yaakov Baridi, he came in front of Rabbi Yochanan, he tried to calm down Rabbi Yochanan. Amar le, he said to him, Ksiv, it says in the Pasuk, Kasher tzivo Hashem es Moshe avdo, ken tziva Moshe es Yoshua v'gomer. It says, just like Hashem commanded Moshe, his servant, likewise Moshe commanded Yoshua. V'chi kol dibor v'dibor shahaya Yoshua Yoshe v'doresh haya omer kach omar Moshe. Do you think that every single statement that Yoshua darshaned, he said this is what Moshe said? Ela Yoshua Yoshe v'doresh. Rather, Yoshua sat and he darshaned. V'yodin hakol shatorah shel Moshe, and everybody understood that this was really the Torah of Moshe, who was his Rebbe. Af atah, so too by you, Rabbi Yochanan. Eliezer Yoshe v'doresh. Eliezer sits and he says drushes. V'akol yodin shatorah shel Choy, and everybody knows that this Torah really is yours. So Amar Lahen, so then Rabbi Yochanan said to them, why don't you other Amoraim, why don't you know how to appease me like Benidi? In other words, this particular argument has actually successfully appeased me. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Yochanan, my kuli hai, Rabbi Yochanan, what's he making such a big deal that these statements of halacha should be made in his name properly? My kuli hai de boy de yemrun shmaita mishmei. Why is he making such a big deal that the sugya should be said in his name? And the Gemara explains, the av David bikesh ala rachamim. Even David davened that things should be said over in his name. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, agura ba'alecho lamim echse b'seiser ken afecha sela. David HaMelech is asking that he should be in your tent, in the tent of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, forever. So the Gemara says, v'chi osal daito shel David she'echai v'kayam li'olamim. Did David HaMelech really think he would live forever? What does it mean, agura ba'alecho lamim? Rather, this is what David was saying in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ribono Shalom, the Master of the world. I want to merit that my words are said in the shuls and in the Beis Medrash. So you see, even David HaMelech, he davened that things should be said over in his name. And the Gemara continues, Shimon ben Nazira b'shem Rabbi Yitzchak. Amar, Shimon ben Nazira says in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, Kol Talmid Chacham she'omrim dvar halacha mipiv ba'olam hazeh. Any Talmid Chacham who they say over a dvar halacha from his mouth, from him in this world, sefasav rochshos imo bekever. His lips, they move along with him in the grave. Meaning it's as if the tzaddik himself, it's as if the Talmid Chacham himself is speaking these words. Shenemar, like it says, v'chikech keyen atov v'gomer. It says your mouth is like the good wine, dovev sifse yeshenim. It's like the lips of those who are sleeping, are gliding, are flowing. So again, the same idea. Those who are in the kever, those who are sleeping, it's as if their lips are whispering these words. Gemara explains, Makomer shel anovim zeh, just like this area where you put the grapes. Kevon shemeniach adam etzbo alav. So when a person places his finger upon the grapes, miyad doviv, the grape juice immediately begins to flow. Av sifsoseim shel tzadikim. So too when it comes to the lips of the tzadikim. Kevon sheomrin dvar halacha mipiem shel tzadikim sifsosein merachshos imoin bekever. When you say over this dvar halacha that the tzadikim said, their lips whisper along that which is being said in the kever, in the grave. And the Gemara continues, Mahano, lo, what pleasure does the tzaddik get from this? So Bar Nazira, Amar Bar Nazira says, Kahadein deshasi kunditon. It's like the pleasure you get when you drink kunditon. Kunditon was like a drink. It was comprised of honey and wine and pepper. Rabbi Yitzchak Amar, Rabbi Yitzchak says, Kahadein deshasi chamirotik. It's like the pleasure that a person gets when he's drinking old wine. And the idea is, Afagav deshasi, even though it's already been drunk, time of bafuma, the taste remains in the person's mouth. Same idea over here, even though the person has already passed on, but it's still as if he's whispering in the kever. And the Gemara continues, Rav Gidel Omer, Rav Gidel says, Omer Shmua b'shem Omra. Let's say a person says over a sugya in the name of the person who said it. Yireh Baal Shmua kilu omed lenegdo. The person should say it over as if the person who said the original Shmua is standing right in front of him. That's going to make sure that the person says it properly. He says it the way it was originally told to him. Shenamar, like it says, Ach betzelem yishalechish. A person should conduct himself like betzelem, meaning as though the demus of his Rebbe is in front of him, then he'll make sure to say over the halacha properly. And the Gemara continues, Ksiv, the pasuk says, Rav Adam Yikra Ishchasto. Most people, they call Ishchasto, meaning Zeh Shar Kol Adam. The pasuk here is referring to regular people. Normal people are not so careful to say things over in the name of the person who said it originally. V'ishamunim miyimtza, but who's going to find an ishamunim? Meaning, who's going to find somebody who's trustworthy, who always makes sure to say something over in the name of the person who said it. Most people are ishchasto, but where are you going to find the ishamunim? And the Gemara says, Zeh Rabbi Zeira. The ishamunim, that's a reference to Rabbi Zeira. He was very careful to say things over in the name of the person who said it originally. The Amar Rabbi Zeira, because Rabbi Zeira said, Lesnan tzrichin chashashin l'shmaite de Rav Sheshes. We don't need to be concerned for the sugya, that which Rav Sheshes says, Tehu gavra mefascha, because he was a person who was blind. That's a euphemism. Mefascha means that Rav Sheshes was blind. The idea being he wouldn't really ever be sure who he was saying it over from. He couldn't see. So maybe the person he's quoting is not really the person who said the original Shemua. Amar le Reb Zeira le Rabbi Asi. The Gemara continues along the same lines. Reb Zeira said to Rabbi Asi, Chachim Rebbe levar pasya da'at Amar shmaita mishmei. Does Rebbe know bar pasya? You just said over something in his name. Do you really recognize him? Amar le said, Reb Yehuda Amra mishmei. Reb Yehuda said in his name, he's reliable, so we know it was said properly. Amar le Reb Zeira le Reb Asi. Along the same lines, Reb Zeira said to Reb Asi, Chachim Rebbe le Rav. Again, does Rebbe know Rav da'at Amar shmaita mishmei? You just said something in his name. Are you reliable in this regard? Amar le Ravada Barava Amra Mishmei. So again, he said Ravada Barava said it in the name of Rav, and we can rely on him that it was really said by Rav. Now, since the Gemara just mentioned above the tefillah of David HaMelech, the Gemara here brings a story also relating a tefillah of David HaMelech. The Gemara says, "Ein dor she'ein bo leitzanin kedoro shel David." There was no generation that had leitzanos, that had people who were scorned like the generation of David HaMelech. Mahayu perutze hadoros, and what did the inappropriate people of that generation do? They would go by the windows of David HaMelech, Omrin lo, and they would say to him, David, David, Emasa yibana beis hamikdash. David, David, when is the Beis HaMikdash going to be built? Emasa beis Hashem nelech. When are we going to go to the Beis Hashem? Vaya David Omer, and David would say, Afa pisha miskavnin lahachiseni, even though their intention is to make me angry, Yavo alayim lo hayisi samech b'divreim. Something should happen to me bad if not for the fact that I'm happy at what they're saying. In other words, David is saying, I promise I'm really happy with their words. Techsiv, like the pasuk says, Samachti b'omrim li beis Hashem nelech. It's exactly what David is saying. I'm happy when they say, we want to go to the Beis Hashem. It says that when you fill your days and when you die, what is that statement? Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu LeDavid. In that pasuk, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying to David, Yomim shleimim ani monalach. I'm going to give you full days. You're going to live out your life full. V'lo yom chaserim. You're not going to have a shortened life. Klum shlomo bincha yibana beis hamikdash el lahakriv karbanos tzibor. The whole reason Shlomo is going to build the Beis HaMikdash is in order to bring the karbanos. Chaviv alay tzedakah mishpat shata osa. But it's more beloved to me, the justice that you do, yoser min hakarban, more than a karban. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, asay tzedakah mishpat nivchar laHashem mizbeach. That is more choice to Hashem, that tzedakah mishpat, than a mizbeach. Hadron alach mitzarf and shkalim. That is the end of Perek mitzarf and shkalim. If you're enjoying this channel, these videos, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And you can take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. And we begin now the third parak of Mesechet Shekalim with the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, B'shlosh Shalisha Prakim B'Shana. There were 3 times a year, Torminis HaLishka, that they withdrew money from the Lishka. The Lishka, again, was the chamber where they put all the Shekalim, and they would withdraw the money 3 times a year from the Lishka in order to put it in the kupas, in order to put it in the boxes, and that money that they put in the box was used specifically to buy the Karbanos Sibor. So they would withdraw the money from the Lishka, that's called the Trumas HaLishka. They would do that 3 times a year. Befros HaPesach, Befros HaAtzeres, Befros HaChag. 15 days before Pesach, 15 days before Shavuos, and 15 days before Sukkot. That's when they would do again this ritual of the Trumas HaLishka, withdrawing the money. Vehem garnos shel meiser behema. And also these times of the year happen to have also been the goren of meiser behema. As the Korban Eidah explains, Vehen Garna Shal Meiser Behema, meaning Gimel Prokim Elu, these 3 times in the year, Hein Gimel Garna Shal Meiser Behema. These were also the 3 times of what we call the Goren of Meiser Behema. Meiser Behema, again, of course, is when you would take the 10th animal, and that would go as a Korban to the Beis HaMikdash. So Shezmanim Elu Kavu Chachamim La'aser HaBehema Shenoldu. At these times, that's when the Chachamim say you have to take Meiser Behema at these particular times, these 3 times a year. Just like when you go to the granary, you pile up the grain, that's when the Chi of Meiser kicks in terms of dagon, in terms of grain. So too, these time periods come, that's when the animals become aser. You can't, the behemoths that are born, you can't eat them until you take off the proper Meiser. But before you get to this time, you could eat from the animals, even though you didn't take off Meiser. Shekavu Chachamim Gimel Zmanim Elu. The reason why the Chacham said it's these 3 specific times, V'gam b'may pligi, also in terms of what they're arguing about, they're going to argue in the Mishnah about when the time again of the Gorn of Meiser Behem is. Pligi hani Tanoim Mefarsh b'Gemara. That Machlokas Tanoim, the reasoning behind it is going to be explained in the Gemara. And so now the Mishnah gives other Tanoim who give different times for the time of the Gronos of Meiser Behema. Ben Azai says, Be'esrim V'tisha Ba'adar, on the 29th of Adar, Uviechad B'Sivan, on the 1st of Sivan, Uviesrim V'tisha Ba'av, and on the 29th of Av. That was the time for the Meiser Behema. Rebbe Lozer, Rebbe Shimon Omer, Rebbe Lozer and Rebbe Shimon say, Be'echad B'Nisan on the 1st of Nisan, Be'echad B'Sivan on the 1st of Sivan, and B'chav Tes Be'el on the 29th of Elul. V'loma amru b'chav tes be'elul v'lo amru b'yechad b'tishrei. Now, why do they say the 29th of Elul and not the 1st of Tishrei? Mipnei shu yontiv, because the 1st of Tishrei is a yontiv, that's Rosh Hashanah. V'efshar la'aser b'yontiv, and it's impossible to take off Meiser on yontiv. L'fika chiktimu b'chav tes be'elul. That's why they made it one day earlier on the 29th of Elul. And the Gemara says, Amr Rabbi Avo says, Kol hein detanin, and all of these that we're learning in the Mishnah, pras, the word pras, what does it mean? Palga means half, and the idea of the half is Palga de Lamed Yom Kodim Lamoed. It's half of the 30 days before the holiday, Shedarshin Be'ilchosa, because 30 days before the holiday, that's when you start darshaning the halachas of the holiday. So that's why over here, Pros HaPesach means to say 15 days before Pesach, meaning half of the 30 days before Pesach, when you start to darshan. Same thing when it comes to Shavuos, and the same thing when it comes to Sukkot. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Mipnei shehein pirkei leida. The reason why these times are the times for Meiser Behema is because these were also the times that generally the animals would give birth. Rav Achav, Rav Tanchum Bar Chia b'shem Rav Yeshua ben Levi. Rav Achav, Rav Tanchum Bar Chia in the name of Rav Yeshua ben Levi, they say, Kidei shetiyah habehema mitsuya l'olei regalim. The reason why these times were the times to take Meiser Behema is that we want animals to be available for those who are ola l'regel, those who are going to come up to Yerushalayim. They're going to want animals to be available for karbanos, so that's why we make these the time to do Meiser Behema. As the Korban Eidah here says, Kidei shetei behema mitsuya l'olei regalim, tekevan de'ein zman la'aser habehema sad pros ha'regalim. Since it's not the time to take Meiser until, again, 15 days before the holiday, Mashi inshi behemta marosazman. People will hold their animals till then. They're going to shech the animals when you get to the time of Meiser, the time of the Goren, shu samach l'regel. That's going to be right by the regel. V'nimtzi shu behemas mitzuyas la'olei regalim. So now you'll have plenty of animals available because people haven't yet shechted their animals. They're waiting for this time of the regel. Likach mehen bein la'achila bein la'karbanos. There'll be plenty of animals available to purchase either for eating purposes, either for karbanos purposes. So by making the Goren of Meiser Behema right as you approach the holidays, you're going to make a larger availability of animals for the Olei Regalim. And the Gemara continues, Amar Reb Yudan says, Shelo yavo lidei Baal Ta'acher. The reason he gives a different reason. Why is this the time for Meiser Behema? This prevents a person from coming to Baal Ta'acher. Baal Ta'acher is when a person delays in bringing the carbon at the proper time. You're not supposed to delay in terms of if you made a promise, a neder, and a dava to bring a carbon. The carbonate here says, Shemitoch shu torem samach l'regalim, since he's doing this right before the regel, lo yishkach milak rivan, he's not going to forget to bring the carbon, and he won't violate the prohibition of Baal Ta'acher of delaying bringing the carbon at the proper time. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yosef says, Kol hamasha tivlo over b'Baal Ta'acher. If somebody delays in terms of tevel, that also is an issue of Baal Ta'acher. In other words, if someone delays in separating Meiser Behema at the proper time, at the times when you're supposed to separate Meiser Behema, that also is considered a violation of Baal Ta'acher, not only when you don't bring the karbonos that you promised to bring in the proper time frame, even this is considered an issue of Baal Ta'acher, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ches Amud Aleph.